was
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Top Trump administration officials are meeting Ukrainian negotiators in Florida today, pushing to broker an end to the ongoing Ukraine-Russia war. This is likely to set the stage for key talks planned with Russia President Putin. Netanyahu submits request for a pardon during his ongoing corruption trial. Netanyahu, who has been at war against the country's legal system over the charges, said the request would help unify the country at a time of momentous changes in the region. US President Donald Trump has declared Venezuelan airspace entirely closed to all airlines pilots, further escalating the feud between US and Venezuela. This follows new US measures against alleged Venezuelan truck trafficking networks. After Trump's announcement of closure of airspace against Venezuela, the government has condemned US as a colonial threat and has said that US is seeking to undermine the sovereignty of the country. 4 people died and 10 others were injured when gunfire erupted at a child's birthday party in Stockton in California. Police said the incident may have been targeted and the investigation is underway. Hong Kong high-rise fire death toll rises to 146 as thousands pay their respects. There are still 150 people missing and the blaze has left 79 injured. Floods and landslides from cyclonic rains have killed more than 442 people in Sumatra. Around 80,000 have been evacuated, more than 279 remain missing, and hundreds are stranded across 3 provinces amid ongoing severe weather. Sri Lanka cyclone Ditwa has killed at least 212 people, with another 218 reported missing. Floodwaters have reached the dam in affected areas. Rescue operations continue as authorities work to evacuate residents and provide emergency aid. Welcome back, viewers. Now, US officials are holding high-stakes talks with Ukrainian negotiators in Florida this weekend as part of efforts to push forward a proposed peace framework aimed at ending Russia's war in Ukraine. The Ukrainian delegation, comprised of key military and government figures, is meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of Donald Trump. Marco Rubio says that he expects to make more progress during these talks. The discussions will focus on revising Trump's proposed 28-point plan, which is now cut down to 22 points. Trump's peace plan had faced criticism for being overly favorable to Russia. In related developments, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov confirmed that Russian President Putin will receive U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in Moscow before departing for a state visit to India on December 4 and 5. The meeting underlines continuing diplomatic engagement between Russia and the U.S. amid ongoing negotiations. Talks are expected to continue through the week, including further discussions in Moscow. Alison Matla, who is the former AP Bureau Chief in Romania, joins us live from Bucharest. Thank you, Alison, for joining us here at NewsX World. Good to see you. Alison, what's your take on the talks that are underway? Do you think any breakthrough will be achieved, the dignified end to the war that Zelensky is hoping for?
Well, it's clear that the initial peace pact of 28 points, which was favorable to Russia, I don't think anybody can doubt that or deny that, has been changed 22 points. Right. We don't know exactly what it says, but it's clearly been watered down. Moscow's demands have been watered down. And it's to Ukraine's favor that they have 3 high-level negotiators with Marco Rubio in Florida discussing what's on the table. I think Moscow is very worried and is keeping up the pressure, which is exactly why a news came out on TASS, which is the Russian national news agency, that Witkoff would be received in Moscow before Putin's departure for a state visit in India this week. It's very important for Moscow to keep up the pressure politically, diplomatically, and also militarily. They are very worried that the new peace plan, which we haven't seen, has been watered down and is against their maximalist demands. So I think it's good for Ukraine that they have their top level officials in Florida negotiating with Marco Rubio, who is one of the more intelligent members of the Trump administration. He actually is an expert. And I think this has left Moscow rather concerned.
Do you think those concerns that Moscow will will be addressed in the meeting when Witkoff reaches Moscow?
Oh, of course. I think this is a cat and mouse game, and it changes every time there's a meeting. So we had the initial plan that was basically thrown out by Europe and Ukraine in a very elegant and diplomatic way. They said, thank you for the plan, but it's not what we want. And they came up with an alternative plan. And now I think the US administration has a new plan. There will be compromises that Ukraine doesn't want to make, but they will not be the maximalist demands which Russia made, which is that Ukraine downsizes its military, that it never joins NATO, for example, and that Russia seizes territory that it hasn't conquered so far. That it hasn't seized. So I think Russia is worried. I think Ukraine is pushing as much as it can, but in a very diplomatic way. And Russia at the same time is keeping on the pressure, because the problem with Russia is it can't make compromises. Putin can't make compromises. He needs to have maximum victory here, maximalist demands to be able to stay in power. And Russia they are not flexible. They are not willing to give. They need to get as much as they can to consider it a victory. And they're not prepared to compromise their wishes, however unreasonable they are.
All right, just stay on with us, Alison. We have some more information to give our viewers. Now, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova says that Kyiv's attacks on all tankers in the Black Sea and the infrastructure of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium in Novorossiysk are aimed at derailing peace efforts between Ukraine and Russia. This comes as Kairos and Virat oil tankers issued distress calls in the Black Sea on Friday while on their way to Russia. According to Maria Zakharova, Ukrainian intelligence agency actually acknowledged their involvement in the recent attacks by posting related videos on their social media. All right. I want to bring back Alison into the discussion here. Alison, there are attacks and counterattacks, and they're continuing. Each side is claiming more and more individuals, sometimes even civilians, killed in the drone strikes and the attacks on oil infrastructure. It's very important now that a peace plan is finally accepted and finalized. Zelensky has already said that he's in agreement to the revised plan, especially after the intervention of the E3 powers, Germany, UK and France. How do you see Moscow to perceive this revised plan? Even if Putin expresses disagreement, he's due to visit India. And Prime Minister Modi again has been time and again repeating that he is on the side of peace. So it's very likely that even Prime Minister Modi during his India visit will push him to go for peace and end the war.
Yes, it's a very interesting development. India is becoming a stronger and stronger global power in the world, and Modi has played a very interesting role. Modi is neutral, but India does want peace, and he can put pressure on Russia, because Russia, however vast its territory is, relies economically on India and relies on the imports and of selling to India as well. So Modi does actually have a lot of power. So Vladimir Putin, he has had the ear of the top Trump administration officials like Witkoff, for example, and Trump to a certain extent, not 100%, not necessarily Rubio, but the job that the Kremlin has to do at the moment is to make Ukraine look bad, paint them as, I think it was a terrorist state, it was said, paint them as undermining the peace talks. Whereas what we can see, Ukraine is targeting infrastructure, is making strategic attacks to weaken Russia's war efforts, whereas Moscow's attacks seem to designed to terrorize. There were strikes overnight in Kiev. There have been a lot of attacks on Kiev. Lots of people have died on residential buildings. And from what I can see, or what we can see with Ukraine, is they are targeting energy, naval ships. They're not targeting civilians. But Moscow has to make Ukraine look bad, like the bad guy, that they don't want peace, that they are trying to prolong the war. And that's what their hybrid war, but that's what their narrative, their propaganda has been saying all this year, ever since Donald Trump came to power for the second time. So their job is to make Ukraine look bad and make all kinds of accusations. Basically, most of them are false.
All right. For now, I thank you, Alison, for joining us and speaking to us here at NewsX World. With that, viewers, let's move on to some more news in connection to the war. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that Europe has effectively pulled away from any role in peace talks on Ukraine, accusing the European Union government of repeatedly undermining earlier agreements. Speaking in Moscow, Lavrov accused Europe of failing to uphold the 2014 political deal that followed the Maidan unrest and later did not enforce the Minsk Accords meant to stabilize eastern Ukraine. He also claimed that the draft peace framework discussed in Istanbul in April of 2022 collapsed on orders from then UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and that European leaders neither opposed it nor tried to salvage the talks. Lavrov also added that there is now almost no discussion of Europe participating in ongoing diplomatic efforts. And I want to bring in Mark Sutherland, who is a geopolitical expert, joins us live from London. Thank you, Mark, for joining us.
Yeah. Hi, Kriti.
Hi. Thank you. How are you? Mark, what's your opinion on the statements that are coming from Lavrov? Do you really think that Europe is pulling away from peace negotiations?
As you've just read, I mean, in TASS, the comments from Lavrov, there they are. Those comments, frankly, you can't deny, no matter how good the Russian propaganda machine is, and it is extremely good. But if we go back, of course, Maidan, we go back 2014, the comments made in regard to Boris Johnson 2022, very often these comments are not then put out in certain aspects of the Western press. We also have to remember under the Biden regime, we remember Burisma, we remember Hunter Biden, etc., and all the rest. The other difficult thing is, and I just say this on my own personal opinion, in my humble opinion, is that it is very often so difficult to read what's going on behind closed doors. The European Union, NATO, has had a huge wake-up call after the illegal invasion into the Ukraine in 2022. It's had a wake-up call in this regard, in regard to how much it spends on defense, and also with the comments that have been made in the past by President Trump saying you are not paying enough, we are doing all the heavy lifting for you, you now need to step up and spend more money in regard to NATO and in regard to your other military spending. And as your great previous guest Alison just said, it's how Russia and Ukraine are then having to then paint each other. And there is no doubt about it with the Ukraine's use of drones and going in and attacking the infrastructure of Russia. They're trying to undermine economically. And with other people commenting, there's also issues that Russia may even have on its eastern border within the stans with dealing with China, which is another issue. Plus, as we say, economically, does it have the money to continue this? The number one thing, I'll just end this with this, Kriti. The number one thing, we want to see the war end. There's far too many lives on both sides, the destruction that we've seen in the Ukraine and what people are suffering there in regard to water supplies going on and off, in regard to energy supplies going on and off. This is really, really important. We want this to end. We want people to come around the table and seriously do this. And understandably, when we have to go back in history, along with the Minsk agreements, as I've constantly said, going back to 1994, with America and asking Ukraine to get rid of his nuclear missiles, and then we'll defend you. Like in all these situations, and far even further back, there is important history, but because it's an instant reaction, we then don't have time to go through all that. And I urge people to do, because this is what Lavrov is doing. The Russians have a very, very long memory, and how they then conducted themselves. They will then justify that from a historical point of view. Kriti.
Well, absolutely, I do see your point there, but stay on with us, Mark. We have some crucial developments also coming in from Israel, where Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's facing long-running corruption cases, has formally submitted a pardon request to President Isaac Herzog. In a recent video message, Netanyahu has informed that his lawyers filed the request, while also stressing on the appeals made by US President Donald Trump to Herzog. He has said that the continuation of his trial is dividing the nation and hindering his governance. Let's listen in.
הגישו היום עורכי דיני בקשה לחנינה לנשיא המדינה. אני מצפה שכל מי שטובת המדינה לנגד עיניו יתמוך בצעד זה. מדינת ישראל ניצבת מול אתגרים כבירים ולצידם הזדמנויות אדירות. כדי להדוף את האיומים, כדי לממש את ההזדמנויות, נדרשת אחדות לאומית. המשך המשפט קורע אותנו מבפנים, מעורר מחלקות הזאת, מעצים.
All right, let's bring back Mark into the discussion here. All right, Mark, thank you for staying on with us. Now, my first question here is, what is Netanyahu asking pardon for when he's not even convicted of anything yet?
What people have to understand is that, of course, on the 7th of October, Hamas attacked via Gaza, Israel. 1,200 Israeli citizens were murdered, 251 hostages taken. Bibi Netanyahu is the prime minister of Israel. From that point, Israel has then, until a few weeks ago, actually no, it continues, has then been at war in defending itself and taking out Hamas, a terrorist group that's on its border there in the Gaza and the Gaza envelope. That means that he has been focusing on that. At the same time, there has been this court case and the accusation of fraud of taking cigars and a rabbit soft toy, and he has been saying, "You want me to go to court when I then need to be doing my job as prime minister and leading the country in this war." And what that has meant, as he has gone into court, there have been occasions when he just said, "Judges, I need to step out here," as information that is very, very important in the past to how Israel was then conducted his war, has then come to him. And what he's saying is, how can I continue to do this when I am then in court? We have to remember, as much as this may be unacceptable to some, and we use that phrase, the deep state, in regard to the US and frankly in regard to the UK, there is also a deep state within Israel. There is also, we have the left and the right wing paradigm, and we have within Israel, you have the left who do not want Bibi Netanyahu as prime minister whatsoever, even after all that they have been through over 2 years. But I would also say, in my own humble opinion, that those voices are getting less and less. You raise an important point of being convicted. Well, the other thing is, you could say, no other person that I can think of is actually, as a prime minister or president or leader of a country, is then trying to lead his country during a war which they didn't start, and at the same time is then finding himself in court to undermine that. There is also a huge before the attacks on the 7th of October, Bibi Netanyahu's Likud party was then looking at judicial reforms within Israel. This is an issue that America faces. This is also an issue that the UK need to get hold of. And what it was about is the fact that if you are the government, you come in, you are then wanting to make decisions in how to then run that country. If you then see, as there's been going on, that the judiciary is in the way of that, then that starts to create some very, very important issues of who is actually running the country. And this case also raises that in regard to Prime Minister Netanyahu's position. Kriti.
Mark, now, of course, there's opposition that is telling him to pardon and then completely, resign from his position. While that is unlikely, do you see the pardon request that Netanyahu has made will have an effect of unifying the country, the divide that's there within the public of for and against Netanyahu, and what effect is this likely going to happen on the October election next year?
Having visited Israel twice in May and just a few weeks ago, there is very, very high unity within the country, especially because of the awful events of the 7th of October. Even people that would have described themselves as left-wing, that believed in a two-state solution, were now actually realizing and saying, this can never be. We don't have time to go through 4 years for many to a lot of history, and that the Palestinians, inverted commas, then being offered a two-state solution 4 times. That's an important subject. But there is unity, and I urge anyone, if they don't believe me, get on a plane, go to Israel, and you will find out for yourself. And of course, not everyone is perfect. People make mistakes. But if there's any country that comes together under the kind of adversity that Israel has had to put up with, I defy that, because they have really come together to fight. Let's just say this: an existential threat against them. E.g., do they actually survive as a nation? So the elections, like any democracy, and they are the only democracy in the region there within the Middle East, which has then had to fight against Hamas, then the Houthis, then Hezbollah. We've just seen the change in Syria with the fall of Assad and the interference by Turkey, but that's another subject. But the key is this: is that it is unified, Kriti. They will get to the elections, I am sure, next year, and we will see how that plays out. But I defy anyone to put up with what they've had to put up with over the 2 years, and to then see it led in the way that they have led it by the present government that is in the Knesset. Kriti.
All right, thank you, Mark, for joining us in this conversation here. And with that, viewers, let's also tell you that Israelis have given mixed reactions on these developments. Some say a pardon should only be considered in the court if the court finds Netanyahu guilty or he resigns under conditions. Others believe that a preemptive pardon could relieve him of responsibility for October 7 attack. Let's listen into these statements that are coming in.
I think that if he would resign, I would be happy to grant him reconciliation. My son was killed on October 7th on the kibbutz, and I think that he should take responsibility for that. He should resign, and he should encourage setting up a national committee of inquiry. So there's justification for ending the trial, but only if he would resign.
If he can't manage being the Prime Minister of the country and going to the trial, he should resign as Prime Minister. And I would be very happy to see him resign and for the trial to come to an end. And if he is found guilty, then he can apply for a pardon. But to ask for a pardon without admitting any guilt, without losing any position without it affecting his life whatsoever, other than that he gets off scot-free. I certainly don't think that he should get it.
I think basically it was a minor infraction, and it really won't help the country except for people who hate Netanyahu. So I would hope Herzog will agree and that we can get done with all this.
All right, viewers, with that we move to news from South Asia, where Sri Lanka's death toll from Cyclone Ditwa has climbed to 212, with 218 missing. The flood waters have reportedly breached a dam. Meanwhile, the rescue operations continue in Sri Lanka. As per the Disaster Management Committee, nearly 1 million people are impacted by heavy rains and floods that swept through large parts of the South Asian island nation, forcing nearly 200,000 people into 1,275 shelters. Over 24,000 police, army and air force personnel are still trying to reach families stranded by floods. Meanwhile, India has extended help to Sri Lanka. India has launched Operation Sagar Bandhu. It has deployed INS Vikrant and INS Udaygiri to assist the affected families. India has also sent 2 large cargo aircraft carrying 21 tons of relief materials to Colombo. Now moving on, Pope Leo XIV has arrived in Beirut in Lebanon for a 3-day visit, marking the first foreign trip since he was appointed in May. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun, along with other officials and clergy, welcomed the Pope. Crowds waving Lebanese and Vatican flags lined the streets, welcoming the first American pontiff to the presidential palace in Beirut, where he will address the country's authorities and civil society. During his visit, Pope Leo will meet political leaders, young people, and religious figures, emphasizing dialogue and unity amid heightened regional efforts. And in fact, those are live visuals of Pope's visit in Lebanon. He is expected to visit the monastery of Mar Marang in Anaya to pray at the tomb of Charbel Makhlouf, a monk known for fostering interfaith harmony. The Pope will also commemorate the victims of the 2020 Beirut port explosion and celebrate Mass on the Beirut waterfront. Let's remind you that this visit follows an Israeli strike in southern Beirut that killed 5 people, highlighting the fragile situation of the security there. Live visuals, viewers, from Pope Leo XIV's visit in Lebanon. Pope meeting the officials there at Beirut. That's all the time we have for. Keep watching News X World for more international news updates from around the world.
What we can do as the Inter-Peloponnesian